Hi, and welcome to That's What She Said, where women's wisdom takes the mic. We've always been the storytellers, the truth tellers, the ones passing strength from one woman to the next. And this podcast is that tradition turned all the way up. No filters, no pretending, just real voices from the women you know, the women you are, and the women you need to hear. Because wisdom hits different when it's lived, earned, and shared. So let's dive in. A lot of women think dating is about finding the right person. But what if the reason you're not attracting the right person is because you're still showing up as someone who's unsure they deserve them? Because in reality, it often starts with becoming someone you trust yourself and then showing up that way. Kimmy Seltzer, my guest today, has spent her career helping people understand that attraction is not accidental. Kimmy's a confidence therapist, dating strategist, and image expert who blends therapy style, body language, and emotional intelligence into what she calls a confidence makeover. And oh my goodness, all of us need that. What she's discovered through her work is simple, but maybe a little uncomfortable. Most dating problems aren't really dating problems. They're confidence problems, identity problems, presence problems. So, Kimmy built a method called the Charisma Quotient, teaching people how to shift from chasing to magnetism, from uncertainty to clarity, and from self doubt to embodied confidence. But let's be clear, this is not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about finally showing up as someone you actually like. Because when your energy, image, and behavior align, everything else starts to change. So if you've ever felt stuck in dating, unsure how to show up, or like you keep attracting the wrong people no matter how much you try, this episode's for you. Kimmy, I'm so glad you're here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be here. This is so special because I know like we connected so long ago through our TEDx talks. And here we are on your podcast. I love this.
I do too. I want to dive right into your work because I have always found it fascinating. You have worked with thousands of people on confidence and attraction. What do you think is the most common thing that people get completely wrong about why they're struggling in dating?
Well, you know what? Your intro, it couldn't be more on point. I couldn't have said it better than you, because I think a lot of times we look at things outside ourselves.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, it could be like your age or maybe where you live or your height or your weight. And, like there's a zillion reasons why you might think that you can't find love or there's no, this is what I hear all the time. There's no good women out there. There's no good men out there. Like, it doesn't matter who I
Mm.
talk to. There's always that variable. But the truth of the matter is, we can't change things outside of ourselves. All we can do is look at things that we can do to get a different result. And to me, that's where the empowerment is. So as soon as people switch from, find me a man to, finding myself, that's when the
Mm.
magic happens. And I always say, like, it's not until you look in the mirror and you say, I'm sexy, I'm hot, I know what I have going on, is when other people will too.
Yeah, and I love that, but that is easier said than done. So before we get into your strategy and before the wardrobe and dating advice and all that wonderful stuff, I'm curious, how did you even get here? Like
Thank
what
you.
led you to this work?
I was so happy you asked me that. I'm like, please let's not do this interview without telling my hot mess story. Cause honestly, like, I would not be here if I didn't go through my
Right.
own journey, my own heroine's journey, so to speak. Um, yeah. And it's funny because when I was going through my hot mess, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a gift. When you look back in
Mm.
adversity, you're like, oh, there's the gift. And really, that's why I'm so passionate about doing what I do. Um, let's see, I'll start from the beginning and I'll try to make it succinct. So stop me at any time. But I'm a good girl from Chicago, from the Midwest. So if anyone who was born and raised in the Midwest, you'll get what I'm saying. I lived a very traditional life. I had
Mm.
the picket fence, the husband, the kids. I worked as a therapist for many, many years. So everything was going on as planned. Right.
Right.
And I lived a very traditional life until we all picked up and we moved from Chicago to here, LA, La La Land, and we plopped back down. And we ended up doing what all the other people here do. We get a divorce. I'm joking. Obviously, like, I like to blame LA, right? But I would have been here anyway. I think it just sped up the
Mhm.
process, quite honestly.
Get it.
Now, mind you, I'm a therapist, right? So I have helped people with their marriages, with couples, individuals. Like I worked in all sectors. And it wasn't until things started happening to me, I was like, oh my gosh. I was completely frozen. And so the first thing that I did is what I knew to be true, and that was doing the work, right? I worked from the inside out. I believed going to therapy, you have to better yourself, you have to get over the grief. And look, all of that is really important. But then here was the problem. So people would come to me and they say, Kimmy, maybe you should start just dabbling online. Maybe just start reaching out to some guys. And I say, that's really sweet. I'm just not ready. I'm still doing the work. Cut to 8 months later. Kimmy, maybe just go on one date. Maybe just put yourself out there. And I would say again, I'm just doing the work. Like we hear this
Mhm.
all the time. I almost feel like it's this overused word now because it's kind of pop culture, doing the work
Right,
kind of thing. But what
right.
was I doing? Right? I was sitting there in analysis paralysis. And honestly, I was using it as an excuse to not take action. Let's face it, it is way easier to talk than to do. And that is where I found myself because the truth of the matter is I was scared, honestly. But I didn't see
Mm.
it at the time, right? Hindsight always 2020. So there was one day that just changed my entire life and why I'm even here. I don't know what possessed me, but something just dawned on me to take a hard look in the mirror, and I did. And I look in the mirror and I was just horrified at what I saw. I saw this disheveled, frumpy mom with just ratted hair. I was still wearing my nursing bras. I wasn't nursing any longer. Flip-flops. I mean, it was
Mm.
awful. And my whole wardrobe consisted of black, maybe a splash of beige. And it hit me like a strike of lightning. I'm like, wow, I wouldn't even date me. Who is going to date me if
Mm.
I won't date me? So I said, okay, well, I'm going to do something pretty untraditional. I need to do something because I was fed up. I'm like, I'm going to go shopping, like shopping therapy, right? So I go to the store and I think I'm up leveling myself, but no, what am I doing? I am putting black clothes in my cart. Same darn thing,
Super
right?
comfortable. Absolutely.
I was comfortable. It was
Mhm.
something that I knew, but it was like a subconscious thing. I just gravitated towards the dark clothes because I was in my dark period. Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah.
So this personal shopper, I now refer her as my guardian angel. She came up to me. She's like, ma'am, I've been watching you and I really think you should try this on. And she holds up this red dress that was really bright. And it looked like 3 sizes too small because I had lost a lot of weight, by the way. I didn't even see my new body.
Mhm.
And I said, "That's really sweet of you, but that's not my size, and gosh, that's not my color." She says, "Honey, that is your size, that is your color. Try it on." Boom, just like that. Like, when people send you a message and
Mhm.
sometimes it just lands, right? And it landed and it almost gave me chills because it's like, "Wow, she's right. Like I need to do something different." So, okay, so I take the dress, I squeeze into it, I twirl around like Cinderella, and I look in the mirror again and boom. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a princess." It really was like a Cinderella moment or Disney moment. And I just hadn't seen myself like that in so long. It woke me up. And so I
Mhm.
refer to that moment as my red dress moment. And this is what I teach and preach. Whether you're a man or a woman, I work with both sexes. But
Mhm.
it's the moment where you wake up and you stop numbing out and you start taking action because we all get in that place of complacency and fear where we don't do anything. And so I bought the dress. Well, this is the funny thing. I bought it as a costume originally because I still didn't really buy it that was me,
Mhm.
right? So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna wear it around. I'll do an experiment, and I did. And so I took the red dress. I wore it walking my dog to the grocery store, to the coffee shop, and a funny thing started happening. I started noticing men noticing me.
Mhm.
But the bigger surprise was that I didn't like it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this whole time I have been in analysis paralysis wearing the black clothes as a cloak to keep me invisible from men because really deep down, if I'm gonna really be honest with myself, I was scared. I was scared of the rejection, not worthy, who would date a single mom, blah, blah, blah. So I just had to get used to being seen. I mean, that was the first thing that I had to really do on my, little path to where I am now. And now the very thing that I fear, I teach and preach. I mean, I even do flirt workshops now. Like it's something I'm very passionate about. But that's when I flipped the script. And instead
Oh,
of working from the inside out, I now work from the outside in.
you said something that really stood out, which is this idea of being seen.
Mm.
And I hear this a lot from women over 40 who are starting to go through perimenopause, starting to hit menopause, that all of a sudden they feel invisible. So I'm wondering, all of a sudden, is it that they are becoming invisible or they are making themselves invisible because of I mean, perimenopause and menopause brings on discomfort with your body. You don't feel like you're in the same skin you've been living in for all these decades. There might be weight gain or physical pain or brain fog. And is it that or could it be at least part of the reason that women feel invisible is because 'cause they're shrinking a little bit from being visible because 'cause they're discomfort? What do you
Oh my
think?
God, that's a great question. And that's huge. And I always say, like, confidence, the way I define confidence actually is experience. I don't believe there's one person out there that's not
Mhm.
confident. It's just that there might be an area where there's negative experiences around, or you
Mhm.
don't have the positive exposure to, or you never did it. So, sexy confidence is really what you're talking about. And that's something that I am so passionate about, especially for women going through like changes in her body. Like the stuff is real, and there's a symbiotic relationship between the outer and the inner when it comes to confidence. And it's not superficial. Right? Like it's not just the inside job. So your question's really valid is like, oh, or are you causing that low confidence, or are things that are happening in your body causing the low confidence? And the answer is yes to both, right? Because one affects the other. It has to. Do you know there was a study done? I think it was on Bumble, one of the dating apps, that 60% of women would not go on a date if they didn't feel good in the way that they looked. I mean, that's a
Oh,
big percentage, right? And
yeah.
so what that says is, well, what if you could do some things that could build your sexy confidence, that
Mhm.
sends the signals to the men that I am open and available, and that will actually increase your confidence because now you're getting validation from the men. I mean, my story is a perfect example of that. I wasn't feeling sexy, so why would I think a man would? I
Mhm.
that was on me, right? That was my story until I did something about it, right? And so and the changes in the body are real. I work with many different demographics, but my sweet spot is helping people date in the second act, as I call it, over 40. And there's different nuances to modern dating on top of all that. So there's all these like layers, right, that I think we're alluding to. And that's why in my Charisma Quotient formula, which is the name of my podcast, I work on 3 pillars: your style intelligence, which is partly
Mhm.
like that outer, the way you dress, your sex appeal, your body language. This is huge. Not many people are teaching body language in ways of attraction, how important that is for your confidence. Um, just that first impression thing. And then I work on emotional intelligence, how we express ourselves, how we are vulnerable and authentic in our interactions, and then social intelligence, which is just our interpersonal skills. And yes, that includes flirting. So it's a beautiful journey. And what I will say, and then we can dive into it more, is that it can be overwhelming just thinking about it all. And that's why I like breaking it down to just little pieces. Like, what are things that you could
Yeah.
do that can just build that confidence? So if you have a hard time making eye contact, let's just say it's something simple like that. Just work on that. Go to the grocery store and make eye contact and smile at 5 guys for a month. And once you get good at that, then move on to the red dress and the smile. So it's these measurable things that will add up to the bigger win.
Now you talk about 2 things that I think are important to point out. First, from my background in psychology, what you're talking about from an exterior point of view is really about the idea of a uniform. And we
Yeah.
know from psychological research that when we put on uniforms, when I come into the podcast and I wear very specific t-shirts with a blazer, and that is my uniform to really click on my podcaster brain. When I used to, go in to teach as a professor, same thing. I would wear suits. And then at home, I'd be in my comfy jeans. But uniforms do trigger parts of our brain to activate, to be part of it. And when you're talking about putting on clothes, putting on certain colors, this is far from superficial. This is that part of signaling to your brain, this is the role or the part of my life I'm stepping into. And this is what I want to demonstrate. And on top of it, Kimmy, I gotta tell you, I know we're gonna get back to the dating and all of that. But what you are talking about is not just in regards to attraction and dating. It is how we present ourselves to the world, professionally
Yeah.
or in different environments that aren't related to dating. So what you're teaching is not just, hey, do you want a better dating life? It's, do you want a more to be more actively involved with all areas of your life, showing up using all the talents and skills you have from the outside in.
Yeah, no, this is why I love you so much. You're like a sister because we can talk the same language. What you're referring to with, the way your uniform, I call them costumes, same difference. I call them
Mhm.
costume confidence. The term, they coined a term called enclothed cognition, and they did studies in the brain, and they saw that when you're wearing certain clothes, your brain chemistry does shift. You are
Does.
absolutely right. And I mean, just on a simple level, yeah, like, I mean, as a woman, we walk differently in flip flops than we do in heels, right? Like, there is an attitude. We are
Mhm.
slowing down, right? Like, even in Halloween, that's another example when these shy women are dressed up as like vixen Kit Kats, and all of a sudden they have this like
Mhm.
sexy confidence going on. And that's why I do start with the makeover process, and it really can make a difference. Um, it's really fascinating. Like, I can I just share a story on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was a woman, I'll give you an example. She hadn't dated in 25 years, and she just worked all the time. She raised the kids, and then she got to the point where she's like, "I'm ready." And she went through menopause. She was not feeling good about her body, but she didn't even know where to start. So she came out here and she did an intensive with me here in LA. And so she comes here, and I mean, the first thing that I noticed is how much she was giving her power away when I took her history, because I do more therapy in the beginning. I could see
Mhm.
that she was apologizing for everything. She was an over caretaker, over people pleaser. And of course, she attracted a narcissist because of that in her life as her husband's. I was detecting that internal stuff that we were going to work on later. But the first thing we did was go shopping. So we're walking towards the department store. And all of a sudden, she stops at the door and she looks at the doors and she just bursts into tears. And I said, "What's up?" She said, "There's something I haven't told you." I said, "What's that?" She said, "I have covered my mirrors for the last 15 years. I just can't even look at myself."
Oh, no.
Now, as a therapist, maybe I would have done some cognitive therapy and when visualization. That is not what this woman needed. I kind of
Mm.
gave her some tough love. I said, Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to hold your hand as we walk through the store." And I had her put on a jacket and these boots. I said, "Let's just start with this for a second. And I want you to turn around and give me 5 seconds in the mirror. I know this is going to be super scary and hard, but
Mhm.
just 5 seconds, then you can turn back around." So she did it, and she's staring at herself, and she went beyond the 5 seconds, and 6, 7, 8, 9, and then tears started dripping down, but this time it was tears of joy, and she says,
Mm.
"Kimmy, I've never seen myself so beautiful." And now I'm crying and we're hugging. And then from there, I created a monster, quite honestly, because then we start skipping through the store. We're gathering all the clothes. She starts changing with the door open. Like, this is a woman who had such body shape. Did a photo shoot. She looked hot. She looked sexy. I mean, in 48 hours, she was irrecognizable. And just the power of that action. I know, like, a lot of these stories
Mm.
sound like almost fairy tales, but it is like what you're saying. There's a visceral response that goes on in the brain and the body
Mhm.
that causes that reaction, that sends the signals out to the world that, "Hey, I'm open for business, I'm available, and I'm ready." And she went back home and she started dating up a storm, and finally she ended up finding her guy, and he was not a narcissist. I
Yeah,
just wanted to highlight that story as your question is really valid. And this is the kind of stuff that can happen when you take action.
yeah. So I think I know the answer, but I don't want to assume. Do you think confidence is something that a person thinks their way into or behaves their way into?
Oh my God, that's a great question. I see, I'm not this black and white girl. Like, it's like yes and yes. Like, I think it's, again, it's this symbiotic relationship between the action and the thinking. I'll be honest, I work with a lot of overachievers, a lot of left brainers, a lot of analytical thinkers. And what I know to be true about you, if you are that listening, is that you get in your head a lot. And so then
Yeah.
you're trying to find a cerebral way to have the confidence to go out and date. And it's almost an oxymoron. There's no way that you can teach how to be in your body, because dating and flirting, by the way, all happens in the right brain, and relating. Like, that's all like relational, emotional type of stuff. And even the way that you move in your body, it's not this logic based thinking. So that's why, like, I love doing the in person stuff or the dating retreats where it can synthesize together, because then it gives those cerebral people evidence of the confidence. So then it starts synthesizing both with logic and the body, if that makes sense.
Okay. So that's fair. I think. All right. So let me ask you a little bit more about the confidence piece. What is the difference between someone who thinks they're confident and someone who is actually in the room?
Well, even if somebody owns the room, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're confident. I just want to be
Okay.
clear, because there's a
Mhm.
lot of people who know how to act as if. For instance,
Mhm.
I work with like celebrities and high profile people, and when on stage and they have a role in a script, oh my God, you would never in a million years think that they're not confident. 9 times out of 10, those are highly introverted people who have some confidence issues when they're not in their role. So I don't want to label that. Do you know what I'm saying? Because
Mhm.
there's no like cookie cutter answer or approach here. It's not one size fits all. It's more about, well, who is that person that we're talking about? What's their history? What's their exposure? What's their experience? And I have no problem with people acting as if until they become. I mean, that's part of the
Mhm.
costume, right? Like,
Mhm.
if the costume's the first hit and you have to wear a red dress. I made this woman who was wearing the most hideous clothes out and about because she was just like, "Oh, there's no good men out there, like, forget it. Why even bother?" That kind of thing. I'm like, well, if you think that that's true, then you're kind of making yourself right. So, yeah, if you're going to go out there in the world and have that attitude and those clothes, then
Yeah.
yeah, no one's going to check you out. So,
Yeah,
you're
it's a
absolutely
self-fulfilling
correct. Like,
prophecy.
I
Yeah,
can't do anything.
self-fulfilling. Yeah.
Yeah. As an experiment, I had her for a full week just always get dressed up to go to the grocery store. And I said, look around, see who's there. And it was almost like, yeah, again, the Snow White waking up moment where she's like, oh my God, there's all these guys, these hot guys, and they're all like checking me out. And we know, what is that term, reticular activation or something that goes on
Yes.
in the brain,
Mhm.
right? That once you see something, you can't unsee it, and all of a sudden your brain sees it over and over again. Well, this is no different. So the confidence piece, it's built in over time if you start putting yourself in that exposure and
Mhm.
repetition. And also it takes accountability, because you can't just do it once and say, oh, well, that didn't work. That's why it's always good to have another wing gal or a coach to help you.
Your stories highlight the idea when you're building this confidence or acting as if of changing the dynamics from chasing to
Mm.
becoming a magnet. Can you differentiate that a little bit more?
Yeah, well, especially as women, right? And I talk to men about the same thing. Like, I always tell women to be the queen of their queendom, and men king of their kingdom, it does come from a place of being more proactive in the way that you approach things than reactive. And that's hard sometimes, especially if you're an introvert or you
Mm,
have little experience with dating. And so the chasing energy just never feels good. And that's
uh,
when dating gets really hard. Now, on top of it, let's talk about the feminine energy. And this is something that I work on all the time. We are in a world where women are exhausted, right? Like we are
mm,
doing everything. We are working, we are taking care of the kids. And quite honestly, we can do it, right? Like it's not sadly, we don't even need a man. But that's not the point. Is that I think we've come so far and the pendulum swing the other way, where now we're a lot of women are carrying a lot of masculine independent energy where men now are feeling emasculated and not knowing what to do. So, like, I literally just had this conversation with a woman yesterday. She's like, "Well, there's just no good men out there." She started that, but then when we were peeling everything away, she realized she had these hidden love shields. She had the dukes up, the trust issues were there. She's Miss Independent, doing everything, and of course, a man's not gonna come into her energy field because her guard is up, her shield is
mm.
there. And so being a magnet is having this openness, this magnetism, the charisma, this energy that is just inviting people to you. Cause, it's just like the law of attraction. When you're in this open space and this positivity, then things just start coming. But when you're in this negative victim modality or you're hiding or invisible, then it just feels like it's hard. And then you don't attract the right people either. So that's what I mean by that, and as a woman, it feels so good to have that receiving energy happen rather than feeling like, "I gotta go get it," you know?
I think the challenge I see for women is that being feminine is contrary to being a feminist. That somehow
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
feminine, that's your one box that you're in. But if
Right.
you're a feminist, you can't really do that. And I disagree because I think that the use of feminine power, and I joke sometimes, feminine wiles. I am reclaiming that phrase that wiles are just ways and strategies to approach the world. So why not use those? I think wiles were created probably back in witchcraft days when men were trying to, push down this feminine power.
Yeah.
But to me, being feminine and being a woman and using all the things that are more innately articulated or manifested by women is part of being a feminist. And those two can exist simultaneously. And I think that's what I'm hearing you saying, that being feminine doesn't mean you're the damsel in distress who needs to be rescued every time by a man. If we're talking about, a heteronormative situation, it's that you have power in that feminine energy, and it's okay to acknowledge it.
That is where our power lives. I mean, this is why we're women, right? Like femininity is our power. But I think what's happening is so many women are thinking that the power is matching the masculine, right? Even the
Yeah.
way that women
Yes.
like go on a date, and they start talking about what they do for a living and that how many things that they've achieved. And it's like, that's not what connects people to people. It doesn't matter how
It's not
much
what women typically do with each other. They typically, connect through
yeah,
experience and
right.
shared values and stories. And
Yeah.
yes, and oh my gosh, trying to be masculine, whether it's in dating, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in leadership, why would you do that? Be who you are, not who society has said that's the strong model. Absolutely not.
Right. And to your point, it's not about a dumbing down. It's
No.
about an opening, it's about a leaning back, it's about a slowing down, it's your sensuality. It's having that like openness that allows you to receive, because then I hear a lot of women say, "Well, I don't see men doing anything these days, so I got to do it." It's like, "Well, are you allowing that?" I'll tell you one last quick story on that, because I love stories because it highlights what we're
Absolutely.
talking about, right?
Mhm.
This one woman, she had that thing, not not that I don't need no man kinda attitude. She wasn't that bad. She was CEO of her company. She was raising 2 kids. She just was Miss Independent. She was going a mile a minute. And she just wanted to get things done. Like, let's go flirt. Let's do this. Da, 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 da. I'm like, okay,
Check all the
let's,
boxes.
right. Like, let's just breathe. Right. And I'll never forget, we were in Vegas practicing, and we walked into the Chandelier Bar, Cosmopolitan Hotel, and it's the best. That was one of the best places to practice because there's a lot of people going in and out. And she literally goes ahead of me. She darts in the door. She whips out her credit card. She slams it on the bar, and she's like, "Kimmy, what do you want?" I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Well, I'm getting us a drink, right? We're here to flirt, right?" I said, "Well, yeah, we'll get a drink." She goes, "But you're not buying." And she said, "Oh, are you buying?" I said, "No, I'm not buying it either." She's like, "Oh, do you not drink?" I said, "No, I'll have a drink." I said, "But a man's going to buy us a drink." And she's like, "Well, that never happens." I say, "Clearly." I said, "Put down your credit card. We're starting over." So we rewind, right? Like, we go back to the doorway. We come in, and I said, "I want you to slow down, look around.
Mm.
Just see who's in the room. Smile, make eye contact. Let's see where we want to sit. But when we sit, you're not whipping out the credit card. Just breathe." So we sit, and she was literally sitting on her hands. Like, it was very hard for her. So we get water, and sure enough, like, I use a lot of strategy when I'm in a place. So we picked a place where there were two open seats, and sure enough, two men sit down next to us. And we start talking. Within 7 minutes, the men say, "Hey, what do you ladies want to drink?" And she looked at me wide-eyed. She's like, "You planted those guys." I said, "I don't know that many guys. We're in Vegas," you know? And it was a big lesson, right? It was more not just of the guys buying the drink, right? She realized how much she was doing that in her life, how much she was just bulldozing her way through things and not allowing that receiving type of energy in every way of her life. Like you were saying in the beginning of the episode, this isn't just about dating, right? How you do one thing is how you do everything. And it leaks into different areas. So it was a wonderful experience for her. I mean, and then, obviously, like, she started getting it after we were doing a lot of practice, but it's exactly what you're talking about.
It's like she skipped the whole part of making a connection first. She went right to the transaction, went
Yes.
right to the outcome
Yeah.
instead of just being there in the moment, absorbing the energy, putting out her own energy, evaluating the room, which is something if she's CEO, I would hope she effectively does at work. And yet, maybe because of, I mean, and you could speak to this, maybe because of a fear of that vulnerability in a non-work environment, she's like, okay, I got to take control instead of just being there, just seeing what happens. That's a
Yeah.
great story. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that some women who are listening, they're like, "Oh, so we're using these guys, we're manipulating them." And I don't hear it that way in that story. I hear it that we as women, you and that client in the moment, brought in the ability to make a connection. Again, that feminine energy.
Mhm.
And I do think most men, and we're speaking in generalizations, of course, they are transactional. They know, okay, I got to fix this, and the fix is I'll buy him a drink, and maybe not even for any ulterior motive, just like okay, that'll fit the transaction. So allowing there to be that approach that's comfortable for both sides because it's just coming from that maybe an innate place or maybe the parts of the brain that are related to sex differences.
It's so true. And let's not forget that we're living in a very transactional world right now with
Mhm.
technology and the way that the dating apps are. And so people are so quick to vet people and see if they're the right one, move
Yeah.
on. People are disposable, swipes right and left, not just in the apps, but in life as well. And so I think you're exactly right. And it's funny because a lot of people who are in, the second act or over 40, and certainly that I fall in that category, is that when we dated long ago, it was a very different world. And maybe when you were in your 20s, you looked for a man who you could build a life with and have a relationship with. And so maybe you dated one or two people and then you settled down. A lot of people, didn't have that period of time where they were just dating up a storm without getting attached. So, what's beautiful about this part of your life, if this is you listening, is that you get to do that, right? Like, hopefully by now you're a different person and maybe you have a different life and maybe you don't want to get married anymore. And so there's different kinds of goals. I love your comment about, well, maybe some women thinking that we're losing men and that way, that kind of thing. And it's like, well, gosh, if you've never practiced just dating for the sake of dating to really get to know
Mhm.
yourself, really what you're doing is dating yourself, then how do you know what is going to be good this time around, the 2.0 version of you? And so it's like being a kid in the candy store. Maybe you've only had a Hershey bar, a gobstopper, you haven't tasted all the candies. And that's what's a beautiful part of this journey, I would say. And so it's practice. The other thing that I want to mention is that people get so target specific and who they talk
Mm.
to, who they flirt with. And that's like, okay, if that person doesn't fit the bill, they're moving on to the next person. But that connection piece is huge, what you just said, because I believe dating is like networking. It's like every person you come across has value to you. And it's being curious about that person and connect with them because so much magic comes from, again, I have so many stories around that where we talk to people who wasn't their person, but they knew somebody, or the
Yes.
person behind us was watching our energy and they came up to us. And so you just never know. And that's why it's so important to be present and slow down with all these connections. Huge.
And not just be present, engage in it.
Yeah.
Stop getting stuck in the analysis paralysis and preparing for the connection and building, and besides that can build anxiety and too much anticipation. Just actually dive in. And if it's uncomfortable, bring, a wing woman or hiring a coach so that you can go practice. Because if you just stay in your brain, nothing's gonna happen.
No. You stay in your comfy cocoon. I mean, start just, like, poking holes in the cocoon, so that the
Mhm.
wings can start poking out, and you do
Right.
it is this metamorphosis that can happen in a short amount of time, but the end of the day, I really say, like, dating is a skill. It's no different than, like, the skill you learned in work or anything else, and if you've never done it, how do you do it? You practice it, but it's hard to do
Mhm.
that when you don't have a roadmap, right? Like, you don't have that guidance, but when you treat it as a skill and not an outcome, that's when success happens.
Do you think people learn to trust themselves, especially people in the more experienced parts of their lives? How do they trust themselves in dating after repeated disappointments and just saying, "Ugh, whatever, it's me or it's the pool out there, whatever." How do they build that trust in themselves?
Yeah, it's a good question. I like that your question is trust in themselves, not trust for
Mhm.
other people, because
Mm,
a lot of times people will say, "Well, I have trust issues," and they say, "I don't trust men."
yeah,
But the reality is they're not trusting themselves to pick the right man
yeah,
because of the hurt. And
yeah.
that's why I think navigating dating is really hard in the second act because we all have had hurt and trauma and things happen, right? And that's why, like, again, being a therapist is so important to me when I'm working with someone because I want to know where the triggers are. I want to know what the blocking points are because a lot of times people aren't aware of how that shows up in the modern dating sense, right? So if you have trust and fear, you may not even know that that's showing up in your body language. I had a woman who was physically abused, and it wasn't until I saw her in the field, her body was completely closed up. She was talking to the man, but her body was saying something else.
Yeah.
Right. And so, your question, how do people overcome that? Well, first, have that awareness piece of where things are coming from. And then it's getting strategies in place to break habits. Because really, over time, what happens is we all just get habits, right? Her
Mhm.
habit was to not be close to men. And so we just changed it. She had to get comfortable being closer to men when she talked, like something so simple, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I call myself a strategist these days more than a coach or a therapist, because I just feel like later in life, especially, we just need strategies to override those default
Mm.
buttons. We're like computers. We just go back to what's familiar. So you have to be aware and do the work around that. You do have to be intentional.
And my assumption is that in your work as a strategist, that it's helping people understand when they're looking for love, but what they're actually looking for is validation that they dress up as love. Would you say that's true?
Oh, that's a beautiful statement. Yeah. one of the women that I still get chills when I think about that. She like, in the beginning, she did that. She's like, "Find me my soulmate." I'm like, "Well, we might have to do some work along the way to get there." And we did. We did the work, we had the whole journey, and guess what? At the end, she finds her soulmate, and she says to me, "Kimmy, I've never been so happy in my entire life." And I said, "Why? Because you got your soulmate?" She goes, "No." And that's the surprising thing. She's like, "For the first time, I really love me."
Ugh. So
It's
she
not the
validated
door,
herself.
right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not the doorway that people walk through usually when they're hopping on a free call with me. But when they walk through the door and then they're going through the whole journey, they end up with that conclusion. Everybody understands that it's about them. But again, to me, that's the empowerment. We have control over our story. And if you want to change your story, you have to go back to the beginning and change the script and what happens in those beginning stages when you're first meeting someone. And that's what's the cool part is, like when you're dating later in life is you have the tools and hopefully um the knowledge to go through that. If you're wanting to, right? Like you have to have that desire.
So, for a woman who might be listening and she feels stuck or she feels overlooked or that there's no good options out there and she keeps repeating the same dating patterns, what would you tell her would be the first step to get out of that mindset, to validate herself, to like herself, to be ready for her next movement forward?
Well, just hop on a call with me. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, yeah,
That's a good
obviously I
tip.
will. Well,
Yeah.
I do these strategy calls. And I mean, if you go to my website, kimmyseltzer.com, I do offer those free calls. And it is funny because people don't realize, again, what's happening through the call. It's a real coaching call. And
Mhm.
people then understand maybe just one thing that they can do that can shift things, right? Um, I would say again, that's a tall order, a big question, and I think again it shuts people down. If you knew that instead of focusing on the man, where do I go to get a man? And put it back on you and say, what skills do I need to learn in order to date more to get that man? Then everything shifts. Then
Mm.
everything changes. So, what are the things that are missing that you're not doing that you can learn? Do you know how to flirt? How do you have conversations? Are you vulnerable? Are you fun? Are you playful? Or are you really serious and you're like doing Q&A interviews? Like what is going on that you can practice because that will build the confidence. This happens all the time. Just those little things again add up to the bigger win.
You and I could just keep talking forever, but
I
I
know.
usually wrap I usually wrap up my interviews with just some rapid fire questions. Do you mind if I ask them to you?
Oh, I love it. Go for it.
What's one life hack or tip you use?
Mm. I always work out in the morning and that is my cup of coffee. And if I don't, I feel like my day is off. So it's kinda like I have my cup of coffee, I have my little routine in the morning, and I adhere to it. So I don't do any of my calls or work or
Mhm.
do anything until all of that is done, and then I can start my day.
What's one of your favorite books?
Ooh, there's so many. Well, I will
Mhm.
say one for, um, women who are dating, Why Men Love Bitches is a great book. It's fantastic. So if you're a people pleaser, you have a hard time setting boundaries, you put
Oh.
men first before you, this book is for you. I make a lot of my clients read, and she's very tongue in cheek. The author, her
Mhm.
name is Sherry. I forgot her last name, but yeah, it's a good one.
That's great. I gotta look that one up. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
What's one belief you had to unlearn?
Ooh, there's so many. That analysis paralysis showed up in different areas of my life and even like starting my business, right? Like I always thought that I had to figure everything out and it had to be a certain way before I launch, before I do something, before I take action. I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist by the definition of like a lot of people, but I have traces of it. And so when I learned to just jump right? Like, I had to learn that in dating, I had to learn that in my business, I had even my podcast. Oh my gosh. Just like quick funny story. When I first started my podcast, like it took 2 years to launch, which was ridiculous. And then when I finally launched it, I didn't even have my microphone plugged in. So I like if you go back to my episodes, I sound like I'm talking in the bathroom, like on the toilet. Like but again, like that was the hard. So again, it's through experience that I get all these confidence, hits. And so for you listening, it's the same thing with dating. Like, just do it. Just do something that moves the needle, because
Yeah.
there's no sense, there really isn't any like true sense of rejection. It's only just the experience that you're gaining along the way that'll help you be successful.
And then what's something coming up that you're excited about?
Ooh, I have my dating retreat coming up in Puerto Rico.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's very exciting.
Yeah, and I can't think of a sexier place, right? And it's co-ed, and we're gonna be doing, like, salsa dancing and flirt coaching, and, it's all excursion based. I do a lot of retreats, but I only do them like twice a year. So definitely contact me if you're interested in the next one. But I'm excited because 'cause I've never been to Puerto Rico, so it'll be fun.
Is there anything else that you want the people listening, the women listening to know?
I mean, I think we said a lot. If you are sitting there and you know that it's something that you need to do, but you just haven't done it, like we were talking about the action piece, just do one thing that is different for yourself. It could be going to the grocery store and making eye contact with guys, or just counting how many blue eyes you see. Like, make it a game for yourself if it feels really hard. Hop on a call with Dr. Robin or me, or like do something that creates that wave for you, because that's when change will happen. It's that idle sitting there and doing nothing is maddening, and it's like, do you want another year to go by where nothing is happening?
Kimmy, I can't thank you enough because this topic of dating for women, whatever the age, comes up so often with my clients. And
Oh.
you offering your experiences to women who are at the early stages to women who have had lots of experience is just so invaluable. So I'm going to make sure that all the details about you and your retreats and everything is in the show notes so that people can follow your work and reach out. And certainly to everyone listening, take what you heard today from Kimmy, carry what matters to you, and pass the wisdom forward. Because when women speak, the world changes. Thanks for listening and see you next time on That's What She Said. Follow That's What She Said on social media on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. That's What She Said is created, hosted, and executive produced by Dr. Robin Buckley. Our Senior VP of Productions and Content Strategy Consultant is Dr. Tom Grabowski. Jordan Gilbert is our show's Marketing and Creative Content Specialist. Senior Producer is Quentin Sukup. And remember to keep the conversation going. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether you're a woman who's lived it or a woman who's building it.